Well, a CDC panel is set to meet today to discuss who should be first in line for a coronavirus vaccine. The meeting comes as Moderna and Pfizer seek emergency approval for their vaccine candidates, which have both shown efficacy of more than 94%. Joining us now is John LaMattina, senior partner at PureTech Health, former president of Pfizer Global Research and Development, and author of Devalued and Distrusted: Can the Pharmaceutical Industry Restore Its Broken Image? John, great to have you with us on the show this morning. As we think about the process of who gets vaccines first, give me a little bit of background as to how these things get decided and who ultimately will get top priority, you think, once a vaccine is approved.
Well, it's a pretty difficult decision when you think about it, because I think a lot of people will be lining up to try and get the vaccine. I think the obvious first choice will be people who work in healthcare facilities, doctors, nurses, anybody who works in a hospital, really, to make sure that they're well protected going forward. I think after that, you might get people in nursing homes, and follow that by people with underlying conditions. Then I think you'll have the elderly, people over 65, et cetera, and then gradually working its way down. The priorities are important because this month, I believe, between Pfizer and Moderna, they'll have enough vaccine to vaccinate 25 million people. I'm told that another 25 million vaccinations might be available in January. So it'll be a slower rollout, and having these priorities will be important to have in hand so that states can know who to treat first.
John, certainly there's, plenty of people who are hesitant about taking a vaccine, which we'll get to in a second, but also millions and millions of people who are very excited to get a vaccine quickly. Is there a concern of a shortage of vaccinations that are available in the U.S., especially in the first few months of the year?
Well, I think the U.S. government has done a terrific job in setting up deals to purchase vaccines, and not just Moderna and Pfizer, but also should the AstraZeneca vaccine come forward as well. Hundreds of millions of doses, really, the government has lined up to bring in. So it's just a matter of production. Now, again, these programs didn't start till about March. The fact that we have millions of people being able to be dosed in December and January is unheard of, amazing, use whatever adjective you'd want to use. So it's a terrific thing to have. Will there be shortages? I think what will happen will be these companies have promised that they'll have hundreds of millions of doses to bring forward over the coming months. It's just a matter of production and then distribution. And so while a number of people might be impatient, I can see this all coming to an end by summertime.
John, speaking of timelines, we spoke to Dr. Anthony Fauci yesterday here on Cheddar and asked him about his take on the timeline towards herd immunity. I do want to play that clip and get your take on the other ends. Take a listen.
If only 50% of the population decides they want to get vaccinated, we're not going to have herd immunity in May. If the overwhelming majority of the population get vaccinated, we could achieve herd immunity. I would think from a practical standpoint, that likely will not occur until we get well into the second quarter, June, July, and August. But it conceivably could occur by May if everyone decides they want to get vaccinated.
Now, John, Dr. Fauci also reminded us that corners were not cut. The rapidity of the vaccines being developed is because of enormous resources, scientific advances. But there are still people who are concerned that the vaccine was developed, quote unquote, too quickly, are hesitant to take it. Are you concerned or worried at all that we might see less than 50% of the eligible population actually taking that vaccine?
Well, a couple of points. Now, I would have been a little bit more concerned a couple of months ago than I am now. And the reason I have a lot more confidence is that these vaccines are performing so well. Nobody dreamed that you would get 95% effectiveness of these, particularly the first two vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer ones. Traditionally, every year the flu vaccine efficacy is only around 70%. So I think the activity of the vaccine, the successful nature of it is such that it'll inspire some people's confidence. The other thing to keep in mind is Pfizer's trial had 45,000 patients in it, roughly. Moderna's 30,000 patients. And a lot of those patients have been dosed since April and May. So by the time most people are going to be able to get the vaccine, you're going to be almost a year into the vaccine being out there, and all these patients, at least in the clinical trials, are being followed by the companies. They promised the government that they would follow these patients for 2 years to do two things, really. One, to understand how long the vaccine lasts. Right now, the one hole we have is we don't know its durability. I think we'd be good for a year, but does it last longer than a year, 2, 3 years? Or will it be like the flu vaccine where you'll have to get it or a booster every year? That remains to be seen. So these patients are being followed. By the time the vaccine reaches the general public, you'll have over 100,000 people on between those two vaccines ever been dosed. I think we can really have a good sense of security about how well these are doing and the relative safety of them.
John, to that point, if we do find that people who get vaccinated need to get revaccinated year after year, similar to the flu vaccine, I do wonder, beyond this phase, or there's government aid, government partnerships that allow these vaccinations to be free for Americans, what is holding these pharma companies accountable going forward to make sure these vaccinations are affordable and available to all Americans?
So what's been seen has been remarkable in terms of the public's view of the pharmaceutical industry. All surveys that are now being done by Gallup poll and Harris polls, et cetera, are showing that the view of the companies is changing for the better. That's not surprising, because what people are now realizing is when you have a pandemic of this type, who are you going to turn to solve the problem? Colleges, universities, research institutes, the NIH, et cetera, don't have the resources to do all this. It's only the major companies that can do this. And so I think people have gotten appreciation of the value these companies bring. And it would be foolish, I think, for particularly the big companies to mess with this to a certain extent. They've got the good graces of the public. They are making Pfizer, at least it says they'll make a modest profit on this vaccine, even though it's costing less than $40 to dose each patient. And yes, the government has gone in and purchased vaccines to treat people, said the vaccines will be free. I don't think companies will really change the paradigm right now with this vaccine. And in the future, I think the prices will be very similar.
All right, John, thank you so much for your time today. That's John LaMattina, Senior Partner at PureTech Health, former President of Pfizer Global Research and Development, and author of Devalued and Distrusted: Can the Pharmaceutical Industry Restore Its Broken Image? Thanks again.